What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the reveal of the number 16 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings, soon to be followed on this date, July 4th. Happy holidays. By a double header deep dive, we'll be revealing number 15 not long after this video gets published. So coming in here at number 16, the Atlanta Falcons, we are halfway through these deep dives, which means we are so close to the start of the NFL season. Man, I cannot wait. So we got a lot to talk about here with this Falcons team. If you enjoy, if you learn something, please do hit that like button. It's the easiest way to support my channel and share the video. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more deep dive uploads as we reveal these power rankings. If you're shopping for tickets, use promo code ThatFranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. You're going to get the best prices there anyway, so you might as well save $20 on your first purchase with that promo code ThatFranchiseGuy. If you're new to this series, what we do is we do a little intro, then we go through the roster, we rank each position, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, we are going to be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, these are my own ratings and they accurately show how I perceive each player. After that, we go through the team's schedule, talk about this team's Vegas over-under and my win total expectations for this team. And now that we are getting closer to these playoff caliber teams, including Atlanta being a playoff caliber team, we got to talk about Super Bowl odds, division winning odds, and just the odds to make the playoffs, and if I think any of those are good bets. So make sure you stay around for the end of the video so you get all of the predictions for this team. So this Falcons team has really spent the last 2 seasons trying to get back to that elite form that they had in 2016, when in my opinion they were the best team in the NFL that just kind of blew an opportunity to win the Super Bowl as the best team in the league. After that, like right after that week, I openly said that this team is going to regret letting Kyle Shanahan go and keeping a defensive head coach, and ever since then their defense has actually regressed and they've kind of struggled with the play calling. On top of all of that, for the first time in the Dan Quinn era, really, this team has had to deal with injuries. In 2016, it was almost a joke how many teams were just falling apart, losing multiple starters as the Falcons stayed intact, and you could really say similar things in 2017 when they won 10 games. But in 2018, the injury bug finally caught up with the Falcons in a bad way, and it was no surprise to anyone that has followed my stance on Matt Ryan over the last few years, going back to his MVP season, that as his surrounding core slipped away, Matt Ryan proved incapable of putting this team on his shoulders and carrying this team into the playoffs. Enter 2019, this team has yet again doubled down on helping their system quarterback, drafting not 1 but 2 first-round linemen. They have gotten healthy now, and with a new offensive coordinator, Dirk Cutter, this team has expectations that they can get back into that Super Bowl conversation. And despite all of my criticism of Matt Ryan, I do believe that they can do this, but it is going to take a few players stepping up and a few things to go the right way for them. So we are going to start with the quarterback here, Matt Ryan, going to come in 12th. And we actually just recently did a film breakdown of Matt Ryan, highlighting one of his worst games of his career at Philadelphia, Week 1. And we picked that game for a reason. It's because it highlights a lot of the flaws in Matt Ryan's game. He doesn't have that mobility to extend plays. He gets very finicky and panicky in the red zone. So a lot of times those yardage numbers are going to be super high because between the 20s, he is excellent. But when the throwing lanes get a little tighter, he doesn't have that elite arm to squeeze it in there. He doesn't have that mobility to extend plays if the pass rush gets in. You know, when the game is on the line and it's 3rd down and 6, there's a lot of other quarterbacks that I'm taking over Matt Ryan, and I think that film breakdown highlighted a lot of those reasons if you want more explanation on all of this. So I'm not going to drone on about that. And you know, it's not just that Eagles game either. I just tweeted out a very similar play of him trying to throw that 20-yard out, which is kind of the go-to throw that you look at for, does my quarterback have an elite arm? If they can seamlessly throw that 20-yard out accurately, then, you know, that's a good sign that he can, you know, create those throwing lanes with an elite arm. And Matt Ryan just doesn't have that elite arm talent on top of a lack of mobility. But all of that said, I'm not trying to rip on him. I think he is the best system quarterback in the NFL. You get the pieces around him to stay healthy and you get some good weapons around him. They do have Julio Jones here. He can be an NFL MVP. And a guy that obviously you can win a Super Bowl with. They effectively did before they just totally choked it away. So no, I don't hate Matt Ryan. I don't think this team can't win with Matt Ryan. I just can't, for the life of me, understand how people are putting him in this elite conversation unless you're literally just looking at the box score and looking at his yards. So we'll move on here. The backup situation here is not good. Matt Schaub, Kurt Benkert's a undrafted rookie last year that I actually kind of liked his upside for where he went. But, for all of the system quarterback talk about Matt Ryan, this season would be done if anything tragic happened to Matt Ryan. So let's move on and talk about the help that Ryan's going to have here. Starting with the running back here, they're actually going to come in a little lower than you might expect here, tied for 17th. Obviously, Devonta Freeman's a very good running back, a fun guy to watch. A couple years ago, he was pretty much a lock for a top 10 running back. Well, for one, we've just had a lot of young talent enter the league at that position, but you also got to factor in here that Devonta Freeman, while he is a very good 3-down back when healthy, health is a major concern for him. And I cannot sit here and project that he will play all 16 games next year. I'm actually projecting that he probably comes in around 10 to 12 games because he's just always kind of banged up. And the thing is, this team has always been able to fall back on Tevin Coleman, who's a very good starting caliber 3-down running back when Freeman went down. Now you have Ito Smith, a player that I like and has borderline elite shiftiness, but he's not a proven 3-down back. He's probably closer to a 3rd-down, scat back type. So that's what's going to take this team down to 17th, which is not a bad ranking by any means. It's just not what you used to have. Then you have Quadri Allison here, though, a 5th-round pick that I really liked. He is going to offer that power element that if and when something happens to Freeman, you will have a nice 1-2 punch with Ito Smith and Quadri Allison. It just might be a little more predictable that when Allison's on the field, you're more thinking run, and when Smith's on the field, you're more thinking pass. That's the value of a 3-down back, is it keeps defenses on their heels, it helps out play action, all of that stuff. You've also got Brian Hill here, a 5th-round pick in 2017. He'll compete for that power back role with Quadri Allison. I expect Allison with a little more explosiveness, fresh legs as a rookie to win that role out. You got Kenjon Barner, probably just the kick returner here. I don't see him playing much of a role unless something happened to Smith and Freeman. Also, Marcus Green here is going to get into the running back conversation. Now, he was a 6th-round pick that played wide receiver in college, really elusive, quick guy. Now, they've given him number 43, which makes you think they see him as more of a running back. He's going to, it sounds like, play a bit of a gimmicky Tyreek Hill role, if you will. Obviously, he's not Tyreek Hill. The one thing I do need to applaud this front office of, which is going to be a theme as we go here, is that they understand positional value and where you can find holes in the market better than any team, I think, outside of New England, maybe Philadelphia. But I mean, you talk about not overinvesting in the draft at interior defensive line or running back, understanding the value of undersized, you don't need that prototypical 6'4", 320-pound defensive tackle to have a productive guy like Grady Jarrett. Understanding internally what their team is all about and surrounding Matt Ryan with as much help as possible on the offensive side of the ball, recognizing that he's not Russell Wilson, he's not Andrew Luck, and you do need to draft offensive players in the first round. So 17th at the running back, that's mostly factoring in that Devonta Freeman just is not quite what he used to be. Still a very good player when healthy, a 3-down back, but hard to expect him to still be that top 10 running back, especially with a lot of the young talent that has entered the league since his time as a top 10 running back. So let's move on and talk about the wide receiver room here. Obviously going to come in high with Julio Jones still on the roster. So they're going to come in tied for 3rd at wide receiver. Julio Jones, when healthy, he's still in that conversation with DeAndre Hopkins for the best wide receiver in the NFL. And his ability to separate paired with his contested catch ability, it's just absurd. But he does have some durability questions and always has. You kind of project him to play about 13 games at full health, which isn't terrible, but you do give him just a very tiny little mark off of it for his durability. So we know Julio Jones is a stud. After him, Mohamed Sanu can still play. He is now really this team's 3rd best wide receiver, even if he is their number 2. Just a good contested catch option, very physical player, a good blocker. good locker room guy. He's very solid for your third best wide receiver, but he'll probably be out there in any 2 wide receiver sets. And then you got Calvin Ridley, who this team spent a first-round pick on last year, again reinforcing the fact that this front office wants to put as much help around Matt Ryan as possible. It's just not very often you see the Colts, Seahawks, Packers drafting first-round wide receivers. But Calvin Ridley really projects as an elite separator in the NFL, a fantastic route runner. Now, I've always been just slightly low on Calvin Ridley going back to him coming out of the draft. I like him as a player, don't get me wrong. It's kind of a gut feeling for me. He just kind of lacks that extra oomph, that ability to make guys miss or make those really nice contested catches. I think for me, he's kind of a slightly worse version of Brandon Cooks, who I've always been low on for those exact reasons. Very nice player and a very nice weapon for this offense, and the separation he brings next to Julio Jones is very nice, but I don't ever see him emerging as that true number 1 guy. Not even a Julio Jones, because he's special, but we're talking about a number 1 guy in the same conversation as a Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, that type. I see him maybe a step below, where if he was your best wide receiver, you'd kind of always be hoping to get a number 1 next to him. Then you have Justin Hardy. He's been depth on this team. He's fine as a 4th wide receiver. Russell Gage, a 6th-round pick last year. They seem pretty content with the wide receiver room here. They have not really done much to address this outside of Marcus Green, again, who's going to be a bit of a hybrid playmaker for this team, who was a wide receiver in college and a 6th-round pick. Then at tight end, you got Austin Hooper. He is so remarkably average as a tight end. I don't even really know what to say about him. He's average as a receiver. He's average as a blocker, slightly above average as an athlete. But at this point, I'm not really expecting that Austin Hooper breakout that some people have been projecting for the last couple years. He kind of is what he is. You could do a lot worse at tight end, but not really moving the needle. Then you've got just some depth here. Luke Stocker, a good career, number 2 tight end, blocker type. Eric Saubert, 5th-round pick in 2017. Tight ends have never really been a huge factor here in Atlanta ever since Tony Gonzalez retired. So wide receiver as a whole, coming in tied for 3rd. It's an identity of this offense. They have had fantastic wide receiver play for years here, and I don't expect that to change here against teams that have poor secondaries. Atlanta is just a nightmare to play against, as we have seen in years past. But then the offensive line here took a step back last year. It was very good during that 2016 run. A big part of some regression here was Ryan Schrader at right tackle, who's been a mainstay there. The age and regression just hit him in a bad way that this team I don't think was really expecting. So they go up and trade up for Caleb McGarry at the back end of the 1st round. Good, intriguing player, good pass blocker out of Washington. I had a early 2nd-round grade on him, so I think that was a good move for them, knowing that they do need to secure that tackle position. He's got some pretty high upside as well. You might make an argument that he has some work to do on his technique and is going to have a bit of an adjustment. We'll have to see how he does, but he is going to start at right tackle. I don't think anyone's going to question that. And we always start with the tackle-center combo, which is still very, very good here because Jake Matthews, one of the best left tackles in the NFL, has really just been a stud for the most part since he got in the league. And then Alex Mack here at center did show some signs of age and regression last year, but still a very good center, one of the, 10-ish best centers. I'd expect a little more regression too with another year of age, but still very good, smart player, still has the physical tools to play that position. So, they're going to come in, what do we have, 11th here on the offensive line. The guard play has also been upgraded here. Obviously, drafting Chris Lindstrom very early in this draft was a surprise draft pick. I don't think he was worth that pick. I had a late 1st, early 2nd round grade on Chris Lindstrom. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. Now, he's going to be very nice for some outside zone runs that this team wants to do. But in terms of the pass protection, I do wonder if he can hold up against some more powerful, power rushers on the interior right away in the NFL. Then they signed James Carpenter to play left guard here over from the Jets. Just been a vetted, replacement level starter guard. So the guard play has been upgraded. This was clearly their number one priority this offseason, was fixing this offensive line, because it's just not pretty when Matt Ryan gets a hand in his face. So they're going to have an upgrade here in the offensive line, hoping to get back closer to that 2016, and it's definitely going to help this offense be better than it was last year. Not that it was bad last year, but this is really going to help out. And then, unlike most teams in the NFL, the Falcons actually have some depth here as well. Ty Sambrailo, if Caleb McGarry really sucks at right tackle and he needs to go to the bench, or anything happen to Jake Matthews, God forbid, he can step in and give you low-end starter play, which is actually a lot more than most people can say about their tackle depth. Usually there's a dramatic drop-off. And then they've got some guys at guard depth that have started in the NFL. Wes Schweitzer, who was their guy last year. Sean Harlow, a fourth-round pick in 2017. Jamon Brown, coming over from the Giants. He's actually played pretty well, but no one seems to want to keep him. And then Adam Geddes as well. So, the offensive line, very solid. You really need Alex Mack to continue to play at a high level and not get hit with a pretty big, age drop-off, just like we saw with Ryan Schrader there at right tackle. But all seems to look well for this offensive line. And as we've been doing with every line, we talk about, are they a line that's going to help you do what you want to do? Are they a line that's not going to get in your way? Or they're a line that is going to get in your way? And I think this is more likely than not a line, assuming Lindstrom and McGarry can play at a high level as first-round picks, that will help this team do what they want to do, which is what you need when Matt Ryan is your quarterback. So the offense as a whole, this is the first offense on this list that is going to come in as a top 10 unit. And with the emphasis that we put on how important offense is in this league, that is encouraging for Falcons fans that you do have a top 10 offense. And you also have to mention what Dirk Cutter is going to bring in here. Dirk Cutter was a fantastic offensive coordinator there in Tampa Bay. He worked wonders with Fitzpatrick, even with Jameis when he came back, as an adjustment. But it was a really, good-looking offense there in this division for the Tampa Bay Bucks. And I do think it is an upgrade from what they had last year. So all is looking well for this offense. But then you got to talk about this defense here, coming in 23rd for me. You go back to 2016, this defense was really projecting with guys like Grady Jarrett emerging, Vic Beasley with a big sack total that year, Deion Jones in his rookie year, Desmond Trufant at corner, Keanu Neal. It was looking like it was going to shape up to be this elite defense in a year or two under Dan Quinn, who's supposed to be a defensive guru. And it just hasn't shaped up. Those guys we mentioned are all very good players, but the problem has been the pieces around there. They haven't really filled out the rest of the margins of this roster. They haven't been able to stay as healthy as they were last year, and it just all hasn't really come together. And we've seen some pretty bad defensive performances from this defense over the last couple of years. So let's get into it here. We do start with the run defense. And we talked about how this front office does a really good job recognizing positional value. Inject Tyler Davison from New Orleans for a 1-year, $900,000 contract. Inject that straight into my veins. How often do we talk about in these deep dives that you don't need to draft frickin' Dexter Lawrence in the first round when you can pick up Tyler Davison, who's just as good defending the run, for nothing, for literally absolutely nothing. There are, I kid you not, 50 or 60 guys like Tyler Davison who are fantastic run defenders on the interior. And that's why I say run defense doesn't matter. It's not that you don't have to stop the run. It's that having guys that can stop the run don't move the needle, because here we have the Atlanta Falcons ranking 27th, 23rd in run defense. We're applauding the moves they've made, that they're going to be much better stopping the run. The difference between the third best run defense and the 27th, it doesn't matter. There's no week-to-week liability on who's going to be able to stop the run. It really just comes down to how much you're committed to stopping the run. and how bad the other guy's offensive linemen are, because you can get a guy like Tyler Davison for literally nothing. So that was a fantastic move. As easy as it sounds, there's only 5 or 6 front offices that are following this philosophy. It should be everyone. And then you've got Grady Jarrett here, a 5th-round pick in 2015. Another trend that front offices have not been following. Undersized defensive lineman, baby. Grady Jarrett, Geno Atkins, freaking Aaron Donald, Ed Oliver. What do these guys all have in common? The best pass rushers in the NFL from the interior. They all are like 6'1". Well, that's not fair. They're not all like that. Some of them are Fletcher Cox, Chris Jones. But these undersized guys are so explosive. They play with so much leverage. As long as they reach an arm length threshold, I don't care if he's 5'10". Poona Ford had a fantastic season as an undrafted guy for Seattle, another really smart front office. Like, these guys are just unblockable because they're so low to the ground and they come with so much explosion. And that's what Grady Jarrett has to offer. But we're talking about run defense here. He can do that too. Then you got Deidrin Senat. You can echo everything we just said about Grady Jarrett with Senat. He's another smaller guy. You got Jack Crawford. He's another athletic guy. Atlanta here really doesn't care about size. They care about athleticism with the defensive line. Crawford, a little lighter. You can make an argument that he should be playing on the edge. But he had a good year last year for this team. Then you've got Mike Bennett, Justin Zimmer. These guys will compete. Rashid Hageman also coming back after a little DUI incident. He's a freak athlete. I don't know if he'll make the team. We'll see. He could be a little bit of an X factor here if he can get in this rotation again. But yeah, this team will be pretty solid against the run this year. A much better upgrade from what they had last year against the run. They were one of the worst in the NFL. We say run defense doesn't matter, but if you are one of those bottom 3 or 4 teams, it matters. Like if you're bad enough that you can't get past the bad offensive lines, then it becomes a problem. But the thing is, most teams just are able to stop the run because there's so much D-line depth in the NFL. But that's enough time on the run defense. Let's move on and talk about the much more important pass rush here, which is going to come in tied for 27th. And to me, the best pass rusher here is Grady Jarrett. Now, he comes in that kind of tier 2 elite category. You got Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox, that tier 1 superstar getting 100 pressures a year, which is just ridiculous. And then you have a cluster here of about 15 to 20 interior guys like Grady Jarrett, although Grady Jarrett's on the higher end of that tier, who are going to be able to get you somewhere between 45 and 55 pressures a year. And we don't look at sacks on this channel. We just look at pressures. And why is that? Well, Vic Beasley is the number one reason we don't look at sacks. He's never in the top 20 or 30 in terms of pressures, but he somehow gets all these cleanup sacks, and no Falcons fan wants to hear this. There might be some people that realize that he's a little overrated, but no offensive coordinator's looking at Vic Beasley and circling him like, oh no, we got Vic Beasley coming after us. It's really just, okay, Vic Beasley's going to be screaming off the edge. Let's tell our quarterback to step up in the pocket this week. That's really all it is. He is a very low-end number 2 pass rusher who also can't defend the run to save his absolute life, and you don't want him on the field on first or second down. You guys know I'm never the type of person to say, keep a guy off the field because he can't stop the run, but he can get after the quarterback. Well, for one, he's not game-changing enough as a pass rusher, but he's that big of a liability against the run because he's just tiny. He's like 240 pounds, like 6'2", like an NFL offensive lineman is just going to blow him off the field in the run game. So, we're not very high on Vic Beasley, if you couldn't tell. Takk McKinley, he is, we talked about who can step up, who can help this team take that step up. He has slowly developed here. 39 pressures his rookie year. His pressure rate took a step back, but did have 50 total pressures last year. 8 sacks each season. He's been a borderline high-end number 2, low-end number 1 since he came in the league. He's by no means a bad player, but he has not taken that breakout as a true dominant pass rusher, which is what this team needs, because Grady Jarrett's a great impact on the inside, and Vic Beasley might be a nice 3rd or 4th pass rusher to come in at different angles and clean up the pressures, but they don't have that nightmare off the edge, and they need it to be Takk McKinley because they don't have it anywhere else. And you bring Adrian Claiborne back, like whatever. He'll play the run on first down. He'll be a rotational power rusher on third down. Doesn't really move the needle for me. John Kaminsky, a 4th-round pick, small school guy. He'll play that same role. Something they're going to need after letting Brooks Reed go here. Was a fantastic run defender off the edge, but not much of an impact as a pass rusher. Same exact role there for Steven Means, who I don't think is going to play this year. He's currently on IR. Deidrin Senat as well is going to make an impact as a pass rusher here. Jack Crawford can move around, but you really are pointing to Takarist McKinley as currently the reason this is not a top 20 pass rush, as a guy that has the upside to emerge as a number 1 if he can put it all together here in year 3. I would by no means rule that out. But right now, they're coming in tied for 27th. It's not necessarily a bad pass rush. It just doesn't really stand out to you at the moment. So let's keep moving here. We've got the linebackers here. This Deion Jones injury last year just devastated this team. For one, they just didn't have a guy to step in to his place after that. Devondre Campbell was not that guy. Foye Saad, Aluakung, nice, intriguing young player, but as a 6th-round pick and more of a raw guy, he certainly had a learning curve, and we'll talk about him in a second. Duke Riley is a miserable player. They had a huge drop-off and couldn't replace Deion Jones. They get him back. He's going to really be the front-lining reason why this defense can be better than what it was last year. And to be clear, 23rd is a respectable ranking for this defense compared to how they looked last year. It was one of the 3 or 4 worst last year. So Deion Jones, elite coverage skills. As a cover guy, he's right in that conversation with Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly. Now, he lacks a little bit of that extra thumping ability that those two guys have. The run defense, again, less important. And Deion Jones is going to be one of the 3rd or 4th best linebackers in the NFL. But we did mention that depth being a slight issue here, which is going to knock them down just a couple marks. They're going to come in tied for 7th here. So you've got, I would say, Foye Saad Aluakung is the guy I'm looking at to maybe take that job from Devondre Campbell. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Both these guys are freak athletes. Neither of them have very polished games, and they might just rotate these two because they are very similar. Campbell a little bigger, a little better at taking on blockers. Aluakung a little quicker, able to cover up some slot options a little better. So maybe we see a combination of these two depending on the down and distance. So both those guys are low-level starters, I would say. Then Duke Riley was just awful last year. You get excited by his athleticism. You'd love to grab him in Madden and roam around and just be an elite cover guy. Sure, that's not how it works in real life. He has no instincts in coverage. I often just see him kind of standing there looking around, confused. He has no ability to thump. That Bradley Chubb touchdown run against the Browns in Week 10 that a lot of you guys have seen that highlights, that's on Duke Riley. That was his lane and his responsibility to at least slow down that blocker and take on that running back. I wish I could show you highlights here without losing all my monetization. You'll just have to take my word on it or go back to Game Pass and check it out. But he can't play. You got Bruce Carter, depth guy. Kamal Ishmael comes in here on 3rd down. He's kind of a safety outside linebacker hybrid. He's fine. They pick up Jermaine Grace. You love what you have in Deion Jones here. It's the main reason this team's going to come in tied for 7th. Maybe the competition between Campbell and Foye Saad Aluakung can push this team into having a quality starter next to Deion Jones. We'll see how that all plays out. So 7th at linebacker. And then in the defensive backfield, good on one hand, bad on the other. On the good side, you got Desmond Trufant, a top 10 corner here, still a stud, fantastic year last year. You got a dynamic safety duo in Ricardo Allen and Keanu Neal. You have another free safety that broke out as one of the rangiest cover safeties in the NFL last year in DeMonte Kazee, a 5th-round pick in 2017. So that's all great, and that's all going to contribute to a actually pretty decent defensive back ranking here of tied for 15th. But you also can't ignore how many question marks you have here at the number 2 and nickel corner spot here. So you've got Isaiah Oliver, a 2nd-round pick last year, set to be your number 2 corner because you had to let Robert Alford go, who's a very solid number 2 corner, got a nice contract down there in Arizona. You just couldn't afford that here in Atlanta. You got Grady Jarrett and Deion Jones coming up on contract. You're paying Matt Ryan now like $35 million. They just couldn't afford that contract. So you have big expectations for Isaiah Oliver to emerge here. And between him and Takk McKinley, that's going to be a pivot point for this defense. Two guys that have very high upside that just need to prove that they can do that. And then at the nickel, my guess is they take either Ricardo Allen or DeMonte Kazee and throw them in there, because I don't see Kendall Sheffield, for one, just playing much this year at all, let alone in the nickel. He's just got injury concerns. He's a guy that has a lot of raw traits to him. He is a very much a freak athlete, and I think could eventually be a good player for this team, but I don't think I have many expectations for Kendall Sheffield as a rookie. Then you got Belidi, Rhett Wilson, Jordan Miller, a 5th-round pick, Taviz Calhoun. Like, I would take probably DeMonte Kazee and see how he does as a nickel corner, but again, that's a question mark. So while you have these dominant pieces with Trufant, Ricardo Allen, and Keanu Neal, it's just a really nice set of secondary players there. You could have some weaknesses on this secondary, but you could also have strengths. There's a chance that Isaiah Oliver is a very good number 2 corner, and that you have a seamless transition with DeMonte Kazee in the nickel, who's a fantastic athlete, and if those happen, you've got yourself one of the best secondaries in the NFL, but they're just question marks. So they come in tied for 15th, and a big theme here, right, is just a lack of depth, right? They lack that true number 1 pass rusher. I'm fine with what they got at linebacker. And then they got some studs in the secondary, but if you have an injury here or an injury there, just like we saw last year, it falls off very quickly. Pretty much every position outside of, I guess, the interior defensive line. So it's a solid defense with some upside, and it's certainly going to be better than it was last year, but I'm definitely not expecting any kind of really dominant defense here or any kind of game-changing defense. All they can really hope for at this point is that they can hang on, that they can stay healthy, keep that score below 30 points, and let that offense, which is the identity of this team, go to work. So now that we got all that narrowed down, let's get into the schedule here. And it's a really tough first half of the schedule. Really, their first 10 games are very tough. You got to go to Minnesota, one of the toughest places to play in the NFL. Then you got Philadelphia coming to town, at Indianapolis. Tennessee's no pushover, at Houston, at Arizona. A couple road games against teams that they're probably better than. Those are 50-50 games. Then you got the Rams. Were in the Super Bowl last year. Seattle at home. Russell Wilson's never easy. Then you got to go to New Orleans, go to Carolina. Not an easy start to their schedule. So I have them starting 5-5. I think they can pull that off, but you do have some question marks in there. Then it's a very easy schedule down the stretch. So if they can start 5-5, I think they will look at the last third of their schedule as a very winnable portion, and they could get hot and go on a big run here down the stretch. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina, 3 straight home games. You love that this Atlanta team in the dog days of winter gets 4 of their 6 games at home, and their 2 road games are like in nice climates, because Matt Ryan, for God's sake, if I could just put money against him anytime he has to go on the road, outdoors in cold weathers, like just put all your money on the other guys, because Matt Ryan turns into Andy Dalton the second he has to step outside of his dome. But you love that last 6 games there. You love that you're pretty much playing the entire season in controlled temperatures. You don't have that at Green Bay, at Cleveland, at Philadelphia, all 3 games that this team looked miserable in last year. Like, it's a real thing. Just watch those games. This Atlanta team is not the same when they have to go on the road in outdoor stadiums. And they don't have a single one of those this year. So that is a huge deal, other than Tampa Bay and Carolina in their own division. So if they can weather the storm in the dome, there's not actually any storms here, but if they can weather it and win some of those question marks games, Philadelphia, Arizona, and the Rams earlier on, they can finish this down the stretch and get to 10 wins. And in the NFC, that's going to be a borderline playoff team that might even compete for this division, but the Saints are a damn good football team. So They have a playoff odds of plus 135. I think that's a solid bet. I think there's a good chance that this team can get into the playoffs. They're right in that conversation with a cluster of NFC teams here. Plus 375 for the division. We haven't revealed the Saints yet, but they're going to be a very good team next year. It's going to be tough for them to outduel the Saints, but it is possible. I would not make that bet myself. And then 33-1 on the Super Bowl. We see the end of this season here with that schedule. It's kind of similar to 2016 when they went on that run. I'm not going to advise this bet right here, but it is one of the better values at 33-1 because if you can get Todd McKinley to take that step up and Isaiah Oliver to be a good player, I think those two things happening could make this defense good enough that with this offense, this could be a team that gets into the Super Bowl conversation. So it's not like, when we said the Eagles at 66-1, like take that bet, put a bunch of money on it. It's not quite there, but it is a good value. And if you like this Falcons team, I would not, discourage you from that bet. But I do have to discourage you from gambling because YouTube says that it's bad and that you should not do sports gambling, even though it's legal in the United States now. So, if you have to gamble, do it responsibly, but don't gamble because it's bad. And we are a family-friendly channel. No sarcasm. I'm very serious. So that's my Falcons breakdown. Please, guys, hit that like button. Really helps me out. Hit me up in the comments what you think, where I'm high, where I'm low on this team. And we will have the reveal of our number 15 team this afternoon if you are watching this live. Happy 4th. Cheers, guys. Peace out.